Next, Mr. Chameleon and the murder clue of the embalmed body. Tonight, we again present the famous Mr. Chameleon of Central Police Headquarters in his famous cases of crime and murder, brought to you by the makers of genuine Bayer aspirin. Mr. Chameleon, as you know, is the famous and dreaded detective who frequently uses a disguise to track down a killer, a disguise which at all times is recognized by the audience. Tonight, we give you Mr. Chameleon in The Murder Clue of the Embalmed Body. The scene opens along New York's famous West Side Drive, where Peter Weber and his wife Edna are returning home on a cool autumn night from a party in the suburbs, neither knowing what a strange and fearful situation is about to present itself to them. As they ride along, the wife Edna is heard saying to her husband,
"I wonder what that noise in the back of the car is, Peter. Sounds like there's something loose."
I imagine it's the tools rattling and bumping about under the seat, doesn't it? Sounds that way.
No, it's not under the seat, Peter. It's in the back somewhere.
Well, don't worry about it. It's nothing.
Well, I'm going to turn around and look back there. Ah! Peter! Look! It's the body of a man. A dead body.
What are you talking about, Edna? A dead body?
Pull out to the curb, Peter. I tell you, it's a dead body.
Right, Edna, have it your way, but it's ridiculous.
See it, Peter? There it is.
Oh, this is terrible. Wait where you are, Edna. I'll get out and look in the back. Edna, you're right. It is a dead body.
I told you it was a body. Let's call a policeman.
And get mixed up in something nasty?
What else can we do, Peter?
We'll turn off here at the exit and get back into the country as quick as we can get there.
You mean...
That's right. We'll get back to the country and dump this body on the roadside.
Peter, suppose somebody sees us. We might be arrested for murder. There's a dagger in that man's chest. Don't drive so fast, Peter.
Nobody will see us and we'll not be arrested for murder.
I'm afraid, Peter. Please don't drive so fast. Oh, if only we'd taken the other car instead of the station wagon.
Hold yourself together, Edna. Your squawking will draw attention to us.
Watch out, Peter. I see a motorcycle behind us.
I don't care what's behind us.
Hey there! What do you think you're doing? Where's the fire? Pull over the side of the road.
I'm terribly sorry, officer. I didn't have any idea I was going fast.
Well, 70 isn't fast. I'm a turtle.
We were just in a hurry to get home, officer.
Where do you live?
In East 95th Street.
And why are you going the other way? Hey, what's that in the back of this station wagon?
In the back?
I guess this dead guy just hopped in here while you were running along at 70, huh? Now, mister, move over. I'm driving this station wagon myself from here in.
Well, I can explain, officer.
Yes, explain it to him, Peter.
You'll have plenty of chance to explain where we're going, mister. This looks like murder to me. You can do your talking to Mr. Chameleon at Central Police Headquarters.
And 15 minutes later, at Central Police Headquarters, we find the astute and dreaded Mr. Chameleon in his office, when an excited motorcycle cop rushes in, saying,
Excuse me for busting in, Mr. Chameleon, but I just picked up a guy and his wife in a station wagon with a murdered man in the back.
What's that, Kelly? A murder, you say, in a station wagon?
Yeah, they were moving off at 70. Just luck, I piped the stiff in the back.
Oh, where's the body, and where are the people, Kelly?
I turned the man and his wife over to Detective Sergeant Arnold, sir.
Oh.
And I got the station wagon with the body being guarded by some of the boys.
What is all this, Chameleon?
Oh, hello, Commissioner. Officer Kelly here says he's delivered a full-blown murder to us, complete, with corpse and all.
What?
I'm going to have a look at the body right now. Won't you come along, Commissioner? You say the station wagon is outside, Officer Kelly?
It's in the alleyway, Mr. Chameleon. I'll lead you to it.
Thank you, Kelly.
Okay, boys, you can be on your way now. I'll open the back of the station wagon for you, Mr. Chameleon.
Thanks again, Kelly. I'll climb in and have a look at the body. A knife in the chest. Funny, there's no sign of blood.
What's that, Chameleon? No bloodstains, you say?
This thing is incredible, Commissioner. Wait a second till I get the coat off the body. There we are.
What is it, Chameleon?
It's the strangest thing I've ever seen, Commissioner. Why, it's fantastic. It's impossible.
What's fantastic?
Why, this body's been embalmed, Commissioner. The man's been dead for months.
Bombed? What are you talking about, Chameleon?
I'm saying this body's been embalmed, perhaps buried for several months.
You're not saying it's a grave robbing case, Chameleon? Why, nothing like that's happened in this city for 50 years.
Well, maybe it hasn't, Commissioner, but here you are. Who the devil would expect to find a thing like this? And what's the big idea behind it? What's the big idea?
Well, what are you going to do, Chameleon?
Going to talk to the man and woman who had the body in their station wagon. Officer Kelly said Detective Sergeant Arnold had them in charge. Are these the people Officer Kelly brought in, Detective Sergeant Arnold?
That's right, Mr. Chameleon.
What are your names, please? Mine is Chameleon.
My name is Weber, Peter Weber, and this is my wife, Edna. But we don't know anything about this.
No, we don't know a thing, Mr. Chameleon.
Is robbing graves and carrying bodies off in a station wagon a hobby of yours? It's an odd thing to go in for.
Robbing graves?
How ghastly.
Yes, isn't it? Mr. Weber, what is the idea?
If I didn't know this was police headquarters, I'd say it was a nut house. Robbing graves? What are you talking about?
Don't get excited, Peter.
I'm telling you, Mr. Weber, that you and your wife were detected with the embalmed body of a dead man in your station wagon. That you attempted to race it out with a motorcycle cop. Were caught red-handed, brought here. And now I ask you, if you were a cop, as I am, wouldn't you have the urge to ask a few questions?
I tell you, I don't know anything about it.
Tell Mr. Chameleon exactly what happened, Peter.
Wisely spoken, Mrs. Weber. And you, Weber, better be sure that you tell me exactly the truth. Now, what were the circumstances?
Well, my wife and I were riding home from a little party at a friend's house in Riverdale. Then she thought she heard something bumping around in the back of the station wagon, and...
Yes?
She looked into the back, said she saw a body there. So I stopped the car.
The officer who arrested you said that you were hitting it off at 70. That station wagon of yours must have a quick getaway.
After we stopped and Peter saw the body, I told him to get a policeman, but he wouldn't listen.
Why not, Mrs. Weber?
I'll tell you, Mr. Chameleon. I didn't know what I was up against. So I thought the best thing was to drive into the country and get rid of the body. I didn't want the police hounding me.
Few criminals do, Weber.
I'm no criminal. Besides, you said that man was dead for months, dead and buried.
What I didn't say, though, was that I am certain, very certain, that the embalmed body found in your car is a clue to a murder committed somewhere by somebody within the last 24 hours.
Murder? But you can't suspect my wife and me.
Who else, Mr. Weber? Who else?
Well, Edna, you see now what happens when the police get hold of you? I told you...
Never mind what you told her, Weber. Detective Sergeant Arnold? Dave?
Yes, Mr. Chameleon.
The, corpse looks like it had been laid on dusty ground before it was put into the station wagon.
Well, I didn't look at it very carefully myself.
Vacuum clean the embalmed corpse's clothes and save every particle of the dust.
Right away, Mr. Chameleon.
But why? Why are you doing that, Mr. Chameleon?
Before I answer you, Weber, suppose you tell me at whose home in Riverdale you were at a party tonight.
At an old friend's, Thomas Morell's.
When Detective Sergeant Arnold comes back, we'll all go out to Mr. Thomas Morell's house together.
But I can't. Not this late, Mr. Chameleon.
No? Why not?
Because my sister, who lives with my wife and me, is waiting up for us. She'll be frightened if we're not home. She's a fidgety woman.
But you could telephone her, Peter.
Yes, go ahead. I know you won't mind my listening on the extension while you're talking. Use that phone over there.
River 1724, please.
While we're waiting for the operator to get the number, Mr. Weber, tell me, did you recognize the dead man?
What?
I said, did you recognize the corpse? You ever see the man before?
Of course not. I'd never seen him before.
You sure?
Certainly, I'm sure.
Hello?
Oh, hello, Myrtle. This is Mr. Weber. We'll call my sister to the phone, will you?
She's not here, Mr. Weber.
Not there.
She hasn't been back since she got the message this afternoon to meet you at Mr. Morell's. She left about 5 and said she'd come home with you and Mrs. Weber.
But
That's
I
enough,
never...
Mr. Weber. Put down the receiver.
Oh, but...
I said put down the receiver.
Well, thanks, Myrtle. Goodbye.
So your sister wasn't waiting for you, Mr. Weber. She was supposed to be with you. And you have no idea whose body was in your station wagon. Well, well.
It's all okay, Mr. Chameleon. We got plenty of dust out of that corpse's clothes. But what next?
I was going to have you drive Mr. and Mrs. Weber and myself out to Mr. Thomas Morell's house in Riverdale, Dave, but I've changed my mind. Instead of that, you go out there alone, Dave, and bring Mr. Morell back here immediately.
Okay, Mr. Chameleon.
Now, listen, Mr. Chameleon, I don't get this. Mr. Morell doesn't know anything. Why bring him here?
Well, you say that you can't identify the embalmed body. Maybe Mr. Morell can. In other words, Weber, you and your wife both seem to know entirely too little about this extremely fantastic affair.
We've told you everything we know.
Have you really? While we're waiting for Detective Sergeant Arnold to come back with Mr. Morell, I'm going to send you and your wife to the laboratory to have your clothes thoroughly vacuumed.
Mr. Chameleon, here's Mr. Morell.
Glad to meet you, Mr. Chameleon, even if your detective got me out of bed to meet you.
Well, I'm terribly sorry, but it's very important, Mr. Morell. I want you to look at a body to identify it if you can. Dave, uncover it, please.
Good heavens, it's the body of Ambrose Newton. But he died and was buried last June. This is shocking, Mr. Chameleon. Shocking. Mind if I sit down a moment? It's like a ghost coming back to life.
Here, take this chair, Mr. Morell. Tell me about it.
Thanks, Mr. Chameleon. But what can I tell you?
You say this is the body of Ambrose Newton, buried in June?
Yes, about the 10th, I think.
Uh-huh. Where was he buried? Which cemetery?
Oh, I don't know, Mr. Chameleon. I was up in Maine when he died, wasn't at the funeral. Sorry.
It doesn't make any difference. We'll find out from burial records. Tell me, who was this Ambrose Newton? And most especially, was he connected in any way with two people who were at your home tonight? Peter Weber and his wife, I mean.
Indeed he was, Mr. Chameleon. Ambrose was a former partner of Peter Weber's. They split up after a nasty row. Well, to tell you the truth... No, it doesn't make sense.
Go on, Mr. Morell. You were saying...
Well, the fact is, when Newton died, I was afraid Peter Weber had killed him, poisoned him. But it turned out he died a natural death, I understand.
Poisoned, you say? But then how would you account for this knife in his chest?
So it was murder, just as I feared.
Undertakers don't embalm and bury bodies with knives stuck in them. This knife was put in after burial. Put in not earlier, I would say, than tonight.
I still say it's murder, Mr. Chameleon, but I suppose that's your problem. The knife, incidentally, is one that I'm sure belonged to Peter Weber. An old Sheffield carving knife he used to say belonged to his father in England. But I guess that's your problem, too, Mr. Chameleon. It's over my head.
If you believe Peter Weber was a murderer, I'm wondering why you entertained him in your home, Mr. Morell.
To tell you the truth, I was keeping pretty close to Peter. The fact is, I was doing a bit of detective work on my own, Mr. Chameleon. Just waiting for something to turn up.
Dangerous business, Morell. Many well-meaning people have met death that very way. Anyway, I'll not keep you any longer. Good night, and thank you very much.
I'll show you out, Mr. Morell. Right through this door. Phew, if you're as dizzy as I am, Mr. Chameleon, you're ready to drop on the floor.
Dave, look up burial records on Ambrose Newton. And while you're doing it, I'll confront the Webers, give them a good blast.
Mr. Chameleon and the murder clue of the embalmed body continues in just a moment. A very important thing to know about genuine Bayer aspirin is that its single active ingredient is so gentle to the system, mothers give it even to small children on their doctor's advice. Always remember this because it means that when you have an ordinary headache, neuritic, or neuralgic pain, you can take Bayer aspirin with complete confidence. For For Bayer aspirin gives you more than fast relief. It also gives you the dependable relief that's important to your health. Bayer aspirin's speed is proved by the fact that it's actually ready to go to work in 2 seconds. And its dependability is proved by the fact that no other pain reliever can match its record of use by millions of normal people without ill effect. So don't experiment when you're in pain. Don't risk using drugs that have not stood the test of time. Instead, use something that millions know from experience is fast and completely dependable, too. Genuine Bayer aspirin. When you buy, ask for it by its full name, Bayer aspirin, not just for aspirin alone. Get the 100-tablet bottle, and you get Bayer aspirin tablets for less than a penny apiece. And now back to Mr. Chameleon and the murder clue of the embalmed body. Confronted with the odd situation of an embalmed body found in a station wagon in which Peter Weber and his wife were riding, Mr. Chameleon has been told by them that neither knows how the body got there or whose body it is. But Thomas Morell has just informed Chameleon that it was the body of Ambrose Newton, a former partner of Peter Weber. And we hear Mr. Chameleon confronting Peter Weber and his wife with this discovery.
I repeat, Mr. Weber, that the time to stop lying has come. I have a reputable witness, your own friend Thomas Morell, who states that you not only can identify that body, but that it's the body of Ambrose Newton, a former partner of yours.
Oh, Peter, what have you done?
And that you broke with that partner after a bitter quarrel. Now, I don't know what your game is, but I say it's a cover for another murder. I'll give you one more chance to tell the truth. Just one more. You understand?
I was a fool not to tell you in the first place, Mr. Chameleon. But I swear I don't know how that body got into my car tonight any more
Be
than
careful
you do.
what you swear to. In a police investigation, one false statement can lead to the execution chamber.
I understand that. And I swear again I've told you all I know, everything.
Did you break with Ambrose Newton because of a business difference or a woman?
A woman? What woman, Mr. Chameleon?
Perhaps you, Mrs. Weber.
Me? I've never seen that man, Ambrose Newton, before we found the body in our station wagon tonight.
What my wife says is true and provable, Mr. Chameleon. She'd never met or seen Newton in her life.
We'll find that out, too, Weber.
Mr. Chameleon, can I see you alone a minute?
Yes, I'll step out in the hall with you, Dave.
Watch it, Mr. Chameleon. You didn't close the door fully.
Let it alone, Dave. I've got an idea that Weber and his wife will talk while I'm out of the room, and I want to hear what they say. Now, talk low, Dave. What'd you find out?
Plenty. Burial records show where that stiff Ambrose Newton was buried.
Where?
In one of those old graveyards near Riverdale. One of those places anybody can get into. But that's not half, Mr. Chameleon.
What?
A man died from poisoning, and the death was listed as suicide.
Suicide, eh? Careful, Dave. I hear the Webers talking. Let's slip over to the door. Easy now. Here we are.
Now, get this straight, Edna. If Chameleon asks you again if you know Ambrose Newton, stick to your story. Don't let him twist you.
I can't understand why I didn't recognize his body in the first place, but I was so scared I didn't really look. All I saw was a body. Who would be looking for a thing like that? Maybe I'd better tell Chameleon after all. It may throw him off the trail.
Your trail, you mean, and on to mine. Don't try it, Edna. It'll air the whole connection between you and Ambrose, and dig up the past between you and Morell.
But I didn't think of that. But whatever happens, remember, I didn't kill Ambrose.
So I did, huh? Oh, but shut up now. This is no place for talking. These walls may have ears.
Well, what do you think of that, Mr. Chameleon?
I think that we'll not give them the slightest idea that we overheard them, Dave. I'll turn that doorknob as noisily as I can, and we'll go in. Sorry to have kept you waiting, Mr. and Mrs. Weber, but Detective Sergeant Arnold and I had to go to the burial records office.
Burial records, you say?
Burial records, Mr. Chameleon. Oh, I see. Did you find anything?
We found out where Ambrose Newton, that embalmed corpse found in your station wagon tonight, was buried. And we're going out to his grave now.
The car's right outside, Mr. Chameleon.
I can't go. I just can't.
You've got to go, Edna. Police offer no choice. But they won't find anything. Nothing to be afraid of. Ambrose Newton died of suicide.
But please, I simply can't.
Come on, let's get going. see, it's just the kind of cemetery they said at Records, Mr. Chameleon.
Yes, a very old one. Easy enough to enter or leave at night without being seen, Dave. I don't see any grave marked Ambrose Newton.
It's that vault over there.
Well, how interesting you should know, Mr. Weber. Yes, here we are. Give me a flashlight, Dave. Let's open these iron doors.
Get that, Mr. Chameleon? They're not locked.
The family vault of the Newton family. Let's see. John Newton, Maria Newton, Ezekiah Newton. Ah, yes, here we are, Dave. Ambrose Newton, born 1901, died June 10, 1949. And the slab is loose right there at the floor, Dave. You move it, please?
And there's the coffin, Mr. Chameleon.
I can't stand this!
We'll lift the lid off the casket, Dave.
All right. There we are. Look. The body of a woman. With a carving knife through her heart.
Let me go! Let me go!
Hold her, Dave.
God save me! It's my sister. Edna, you killed her. You killed my sister.
Hold yourself together, Mr. Weber. This is exactly what I expected to find.
But my sister was alive this afternoon.
And on her way, I understand, to meet you and your wife at Riverdale, less than 2 miles from here.
She wasn't. That message was a fake.
Dave, radio headquarters to pick up this body and say that we're on our way in with Peter Weber and his wife Edna to be held on suspicion of murder.
And soon after, at police headquarters, we hear Detective Sergeant Dave Arnold saying,
Well, who'd think the case of the embalmed corpse would turn out this way? Those Webers must be nuts. You've got 'em cold, Mr. Chameleon.
Perhaps, but not with enough evidence yet to convince a jury. And believe you me, the Webers will never go into court without a top-drawer defense.
But where do we get more evidence, Mr. Chameleon?
Well, the man who'll supply it, if my hunch is right, is Mr. Thomas Morrell. Do you remember, Dave, what we overheard Weber saying to his wife about her past connection with Morrell?
Uh-huh. Do we go out to Morrell's now?
I'm going there alone, Dave, and I'm going in disguise. If I approach Morrell as Chameleon, he might try to cover Weber's wife, Edna.
But in what disguise?
As former Detective Herman Schmidt, thrown off the force only this day for accepting bribes. A broken man who thinks he's been framed and is out to get even with the man who broke him. Chameleon by name.
Hey, that's an idea. So you'll be ex-detective Herman Schmidt.
And do you have the Webers outside Morrell's house, Dave? When I blow my police whistle, bring them inside. You get me? Right. Fine, Dave.
So, shortly after, we hear Mr. Chameleon, in his disguise as the broken detective Herman Schmidt, speaking to Thomas Morrell, hoping to get missing evidence.
Oh, you say, Mr. Morrell, how that dirty Chameleon got me thrown off the force. He lied me out. I never took a penny from any crook in my life. Now I'm out to show him up.
I understand, but I don't see how it affects me.
Well, the point is this. Chameleon has pinched Edna Weber for murder. He thinks he's got her nailed.
Edna? Edna, you say, Detective Schmidt? Chameleon's insane. Edna wouldn't kill anybody. Her husband, Peter Weber, killed 2 people. He killed his own partner, Ambrose Newton, and then he killed his own sister.
Sure, that's what I think. But you see, Chameleon found the sister's body in Ambrose Newton's vault. And believe me or not, just because that poor girl, Edna Weber, got hysterical at the vault, Chameleon picked her out as the killer. A dumb cop if I ever saw one.
But what can I do? I'd give my life for Edna, bad as she treated me. Chameleon's mad. Didn't he find Ambrose Newton's embalmed body in Peter Weber's station wagon? Didn't that lead him to the body of Weber's sister? What more does the fool want?
Yeah, what more, the blockhead. Hey, wait. I got an idea.
What's that? You'll wake up the neighborhood.
Here we are, Mr. Chameleon.
Why are we brought here to Morrell's house?
Get that murderer, Peter Weber, out of my house, Detective Sergeant Arnold.
What do you want with me? Let me go. You must. You must.
I thought I might need you, Mrs. Weber.
What? You're Mr. Chameleon.
What? You are Chameleon.
Yes, I'm Chameleon, in disguise. I thought I'd need you and your husband, Mrs. Weber, but I don't. This man, Thomas Morrell, has just confessed the murder of your sister-in-law.
What? Me? You're mad.
No, but you are, Morrell. You just told me that Peter Weber had killed his sister. Not a living soul knew she was murdered except my partner, Dave Arnold, myself, Mr. and Mrs. Weber, and you, Morrell, the murderer. Nobody else could know. Now tell me why you...
Dave! Stop it! Let go of it. Hand over that knife, Morrell. Okay, Mr. Chameleon.
Thanks. Now tell me, Morrell, why did you get the fantastic idea of taking Ambrose Newton's body out of its tomb, planting it in Peter Weber's station wagon while he was visiting you, and why did you kill his sister?
Because Weber stole Edna away from me the day we were to be married. I wanted him to suffer the way I suffered. Suffer and suffer and suffer. I wanted him convicted for 2 murders. Then I'd have my Edna back.
Oh, Tom, you are mad.
Oh, no, not mad, Edna, but clever. Clever enough to lure Peter's sister to the cemetery this afternoon and kill her, put her body in Ambrose Newton's vault, and put his body with a knife in it in your station wagon. I almost put the blame on Peter. I almost did.
Take him along, Dave. The moral of this case is that if you plan to kill one person to be put in another's grave, one coffin won't hold 2 bodies. And an embalmed corpse is very difficult to plant on anybody.
And with these words, Mr. Chameleon concludes tonight's murder case. It's only natural that when you have an ordinary headache, you want fast relief. And to find out how quickly Bayer aspirin is ready to go to work, all you need do is test it in a glass of water. What happens to a Bayer aspirin tablet in the glass also happens in your stomach, and the speed with which it disintegrates indicates the speed with which it's ready to go to work. When you make this test, you'll see that Bayer aspirin tablets start disintegrating almost instantly, are actually ready to go to work in 2 seconds. Hence, they provide remarkably fast relief. So when you need something to relieve pain, be sure of how quickly it will act. Be sure with Bayer aspirin. When you buy, ask for Bayer aspirin, not just for aspirin alone. Get the 100-tablet bottle and you get Bayer aspirin tablets for less than a penny apiece. Listen next Wednesday night at this same time for Mr. Chameleon, the man of many faces, in The Hanging Judge Murder Case. The part of Mr. Chameleon is played by Carl Swenson, with dialogue by Frank Hummert from the original story by Frank and Ann Hummert. Music directed by Victor Arden. Your announcer is Howard Claney.
Thanks to a remarkable scientific discovery, you can now actually help prevent cavities. What you do is use new ammoniated Dr. Lyon's tooth powder. Based on a formula developed by University of Illinois scientists, it destroys bacteria Lactobacillus acidophilus, which cause cavities. Thus, it not only cuts down tooth decay, but pain, worry, and expense as well. That's why so many dentists are recommending this type dentifrice. So to cut down tooth decay, to have sounder, healthier, handsomer teeth, use ammoniated Dr. Lyon's tooth powder. Both regular Dr. Lyon's tooth powder and new ammoniated Dr. Lyon's are at all drug and toilet goods counters.
Listen for Mr. Chameleon in The Hanging Judge Murder Case next Wednesday night at this time. This is CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System.